Today, I'd like to talk about availability and utility of crop composition data. And, well, I'm pretty sure I don't need to talk about this in front of the people who are not more familiar with the necessity of biotechnology. But as an introduction, let me briefly explain the background of this subject. Today, the world population is estimated about 7 billion, and there are many, although there are many different estimations according to the different variations. The world population is expected to become more than 9 billion in the year of 2050, which is less than 40 years away. And looking back, the 35-year period from 1970 to 2005, we saw more than 2.5 billion increase in the population, and at the same period, we saw a big increase in the per capita income. And because of this increase in the population and the income, the world demand for food has augmented. I show here as an example, and the world demand for wheat, maize, and soy increased a lot. And same thing will keep happening. The Food and Agriculture Organization says that by 2050, the world's population will reach more than 9 billion. And in order to feed this larger population, food production must increase by 70%. So, in order to provide enough food to the such big population, there are many problems to solve. We have to think about the capacity of land and water. And also, we have to invest more in research and development of new technologies. And I'm sure it is not the only answer, but the GMO is definitely one of the answers. And actually, the global area of GM crops has been steadily increasing, both in industrial and developing countries. But at the same time, the concerns have been expressed by the general public, and also the popular myths about the GM crops, such as the potato things or the BT pollens against nut butterflies, were circulated. But for the commercial use of the GMO, it has been much care has been taken to prevent any risks. And actually, international effort has been made for the safety assessment of GMO. And I'd like to briefly mention about the outline of this. And for the safety assessment of GMO, many international organizations have played an important role, especially such as the WHO and FAO and OECD and Codex, and especially for the basic framework of risk assessment of GMO as food, the OECD and Codex, the role of OECD and Codex Alimentarius cannot be discounted. And as the development of recombinant DNA technology was established in 1973, even at the experimental level, biosafety concerns were expressed from the beginning. And in the next year, in 1974, Dr. Berg sent a historical letter called Berg Letter to the National Academy of Science, in which he called for voluntary moratorium on certain recombinant DNA research and holding of an international conference to evaluate the potential hazards, and setting up guidelines for biotechnology research. And in response to this letter, a conference was held the next year. And as shown here, regarding the recombinant DNA technology, although no actual risk had observed, precautionary principles have been taken from the beginning. And up to this point, the safety consideration was at the laboratory level, but in the wake of insulin production by the recombinant DNA technology, the focus of recombinant DNA safety considerations moved from experimental level to the large-scale industrial applications. Then, internationally harmonized guidelines for industrialization were desired in order to lead to future development of biotechnology in developed countries. Then, OECD came into play in safety considerations at large-scale industrial applications. And the basic framework for risk assessment was discussed at OECD, and the discussion at the OECD can be divided into two rounds. And among two rounds, the second round is considered as much more important in terms of the safety assessment of GMO as food. And there, the safety evaluation of intended introduction of GMO into environment and safety evaluation of foods derived by modern biotechnology were discussed. And discussion at the first round, still the safety, the focus was on the GM commercialization of GMO in a confined environment. But from the late 1980s, GM crops came into the range of commercialization. Then the establishment of a risk assessment of GMO intentionally introduced into environment and foods derived from GMO were wanted. And then the second round of OECD discussion started in 1988. And in 1993, safety evaluation of foods derived by modern biotechnology, concepts and principles was published. And here, the concept of substantial equivalence was introduced. So we talked about substantial equivalence a lot, but what is substantial equivalence? It is a very important concept for the safety assessment of GMO as food. And because of this, as I will talk later, I will mention about it later, we launched the crop composition database. And the concept of substantial equivalence embodies the idea that existing organisms used as food or as a source food can be used as a basis for comparison when assessing the safety of human consumption of a food component that has been modified or is new. For example, when developing GM maize, there has been already a conventional maize for use consumed as a human food. So you can perform the safety assessment by comparing the GM maize and its conventional counterpart. And once the GM maize is determined to be substantially equivalent to the existing food, the GM food is treated in the same manner as its counterpart. And after such an important concept, the substantial equivalence was advocated in OECD, the discussion over the safety assessment of GMO moved to the Codex Alimentarius Commission, because the Codex Alimentarius Commission has very important mission to develop food standards, guidelines, and related texts in order to protect the health of consumers and to ensure fair trade practice in the food trade. And at that time, already the GM food was in the process of commercialization, and the more consolidated guidelines were wanted. And under the Codex Alimentarius Commission, ad hoc intergovernmental task force on food derived from biotechnology was created. And there, establishment of international guidelines and recommendations for the risk analysis of foods derived from modern biotechnology was targeted. And also, the discussion at Codex Alimentarius Commission can be divided into two sessions, two two rounds, and the first round studied in 2000 is considered as a milestone. In the first round, three very important documents were adopted, and especially two of them are much more important. The first one is Principles for the Risk Analysis of Food Derived from Modern Biotechnology, which includes concept of substantial equivalence and consideration for unintended effects. And the second one is Guideline for Conduct of Food Safety Assessment of Food Derived from Recombinant DNA plant. And based on these guidelines and also other documents prepared by many international organizations, derivative guidelines and also standards were produced and have been conducted the safety assessment in individual countries. So therefore, there is general consistency in the individual countries' approaches to the evaluating the safety assessment of the GMO as food. Then I'd like to move to the today's main topic, crop composition database. And in response to the, well, as I have talked so far, comparative approach is considered as a strategy for safety assessment of GM food, in which the determination of similarities and differences between the GM food and its conventional counterpart will be performed. And for the comparative approach, the compositional comparison is an as important element. But in fact, the composition of various crops demonstrates a wide range of natural variability and also a broad range of factors, both endogenous and exogenous factors, affect crop compositions. Under such a circumstance, the OECD has published OECD consensus documents addressing compositional considerations for new GM crops. And OECD consensus documents not only identify the key nutrients, anti-nutrients, and toxins of each crop, but also provide existing composition data. So OECD document, consensus document, will be talked today later, but OECD consensus document is very important resource for the safety assessment of GMO. But regarding the composition data provided in the consensus document, they cannot be easily updated. And also, many new conventional crops have been developed. Therefore, an easily accessible and updatable compilation of crop composition data that provides up-to-date information on the natural variability in crop composition is required. And in response to this demand, the ILSI began assembling the easily accessible worldwide compilation of crop composition data, and they released the ILSI crop composition database version 1 in 2003, and the samples provided for the database were collected under the agreement between the major crop companies collected from multiple locations such as North America, South America, and European Unions over a 6-year period. And also the samples were grown in controlled field trial. And at the release of first version, the total number of data points were over the 50,000, and it has been given a lot of information. And since the first release of the database, several version updates have been conducted to improve the database. And in version 3, additional composition data was added, and the covered crops became 3, including cotton. And 2 years ago, they released version 4, which was reconstructed for increased speed and efficiency, and also the functionality, performance, security, availability, and scalability were also improved. For example, version 4 provides amino acid and fatty acid data in multiple formats. And since then, as needed, the version update have been conducted to improve the database. And at the same time, with the same concept with ILSI database, we at the NFRI launched the crop composition database. We collected rice and soybean for the data collection. And for rice, the samples were collected over the 9-year period. That is from 1999 to 2002 and 2005 to 2009. And for soybean, we collected samples for over 4-year period. And since we Japanese consume a wide variety of soybean and rice and harvested in all through Japan, so we collected many varieties of soy and rice. And also, although Japan is a very small country, but it's the island stretched from north to south, and the difference of climate is quite big. For example, as shown here, the difference of average temperature is nearly 10 degrees centigrade from the north to south. So, for the thus the selection of the variety is very important based on the production area. And then for the sample of 2002, we chose 10 varieties of rice and 13 production areas. And also, in addition to it, the climate change every year, and also the fertilizer application may be different from one farmer to the another. So sample we actually purchased soy and rice sample, which were actually distributed in the Japanese market. And we analyzed these analytes for the composition database, and for the detection for the analyzing method, it is very important to get the reliable data. We analyze the analyte using mostly the validated method. This shows the amino acid composition data in 2009, and along with maximum and minimum values. Also, I put the OECD data, which is taken from the OECD consensus document, and comparing the maximum and minimum value with OECD data. Besides, I think, varying, other amino acid values are somehow out of the range of OECD data. Also, this shows the Isoflavone values of soybean samples, and I highlighted minimum values and maximum values. And it is obvious that there is so much difference between minimum and maximum values, and we can see, and for some cases, the maximum values more than 10 times the minimum values, and we can see the wide range of natural variability in many analytes. Then we constructed food composition database for safety assessment of genetically modified crops as foods and feeds. And this is a summary of National Food Research Institute food crop composition database. We first released the Japanese version of the database, but in order to make it available to more users, we also released the English version. And database such can be conducted by choosing crop, variety, production area, unlike the production years. And references given to each method. And also the data input is conducted directly via the internet for the prompt release of data. But at the same time, in order to prevent erroneous data release, checking is run before the data release. And also data are protected by ID and password. And for users, the data can be downloaded in a CSV format. This is a search page, and the user can just select items in interest from the pull-down menus, and by clicking search, the search result can be obtained. And if user want, the data can be downloaded by just clicking download. And the data can be downloaded in CSV format as shown here. And the data can be utilized for any purpose. And also, we try to offer a user-friendliness on the database. And finally, I'd like to look at how composition data have been used in a safety assessment process. In many countries, safety assessment has been conducted following the regulations and rules in that country. And in the case of Japan, the safety data are submitted to the Ministry of Health by the applicant. And safety assessment is conducted in the Food Safety Commission at the request of Ministry of Health. The safety assessment is conducted based on the standards which was formulated by the Food Safety Commission. And the most important standard, the standard for the safety assessment of genetically modified food, seed plants, have been, as I had already mentioned, this was formulated based on the Codex guidelines. And Chapter 2 of the standard is the standard for the safety assessment of the recombinant seed plant as food. And there are 7 sections in the Chapter 2, and Section 1 is properties of the host used as a counterpart or comparison in safety assessment and its differences from the recombinant plant. And here, the comparator should be defined. And Section 6 deals with the recombinant plant itself. And in Section 6, differences from the host should be considered. And as here, based on comparative data between the recombinant plant and non-recombinant plants, including the host, it should be determined whether or not the recombinant plant is significantly different from the host in terms of nutritional components, toxins, and anti-nutrients. In principle, there should be no significant differences. If any significant differences are revealed, scientific rationales should be presented to demonstrate that the compositional differences will not affect human health. So as stated here, the difference should be well considered. And after the procedure is shown here, first, the comparison of composition data is conducted between the GM crop and its conventional counterpart, which was grown in controlled field trial. And if there is any significant differences, if there is no significant difference, it's okay. But if there is significant difference, in that case, the GM data will be compared with reported data. And actually here, the data from ILSI database has been used for the safety assessment of some of the GM soy, GM maize, and GM cotton. But unfortunately, nobody has applied for the safety assessment of GM rice. So I haven't seen our database was used for the safety assessment of the for the purpose of safety assessment. Anyway, here the GM composition data falls into the range of natural variability. The difference is considered not significant, but if not, scientific rationale should be presented to demonstrate that the compositional differences will not affect human health. And especially in the case of nutritionally modified crops, the much consideration has to be taken. And as of July this year, already 189 kinds of GM crops have gone through the safety assessment and can be available in the Japanese market already. And as conclusion, a comparative approach is well recognized as a strategy for the safety assessment of GM foods. And compositional comparison is an important element in the determination of substantial equivalence. And because of the natural variability in crop composition, the compilation of crop composition data has been required. Crop composition database, such as the ILSI database, has been effectively utilized for safety assessments of GM foods. But still, improvement of the database are required, such as updating data and adding new crops. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Laura Paval, BASF. I was wondering of the comparability of your database with the soy data in the ILSI.
Well, I haven't checked the compatibility of the both database, but I think the methodology which we use are a little bit different, so we have to check, and if necessary, we have to convert or we have to separately put the data.
Thank you.